Far more impactful than secular humanism on the world for good is Christian humanism. Christianity is the biggest movement in history, and followers follow, having substantial value impact. We can say that there's a sense of predictability down the road, so that the compassionate Jesus community emerged very early on. This fact is recognized even by the most ardent atheist thinkers, like Peter Singer at Princeton. I've been to his office, went there to visit him. I taught about him when I taught ethics for 12 years at Indiana University. He's the most famous moral philosopher alive. He believes in things like infanticide, sex with animals, a whole host of interesting things. Like Steven Pinker, he's an atheist Jew, but he's not a capitalist like Pinker, he's a Marxist. But he confesses this as an ethicist in his book, The Unsanctifying of Human Life. If God does not exist, there's no such thing as a sanctifier, so you can no longer have the sanctity. That will have implications. And he says this: the doctrine of the sanctity of human life and the seriousness with which the killing of any member of our species is regarded mark off the Christian ethical and cultural tradition from almost all others. That very many different societies have seen no moral objection to abortion and infanticide, I think, is well known. Even if we restrict our attention to infanticide, killing babies, the list is almost endless. Both Plato in the Republic and Aristotle in his Politics propose that the state command the killing of deformed infants. We find nothing resembling the doctrine that the lives of all born of human parents are sacred in the pre-Christian literature. Nothing. There can be no doubt that the change in European attitudes to abortion and infanticide is the product of the coming of Christianity. And so we have this Christian humanism. Christian humanism being movement-centered and leading to organized charity, far more impactful than secular humanism on the world for good, is Christian humanism. Even just the abortion issue, when we bring that issue up, and I'm not arguing one way or the other at this point, I'm just giving a descriptive fact of the matter. It's common to hear critics of Christians, the most prolific, I think, and prominent defenders of the right to life of the most vulnerable and innocent in our species, that those people are concerned only for the preborn, but not for the postborn. They're concerned only for the womb, but not for the tomb or anything in between that. They're not concerned for the whole of life. And as the aphorism goes, life begins at conception and ends at birth for those people. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are 600 Planned Parenthoods in America that offer health services, in addition to, let's just be frank about the methods that happen in there, to beheading, ripping off limbs, and burning alive babies, in addition to medicine in women's health facilities. But there are over 3,000 centers that offer only genuinely women's health and not a mixed bag of Grim Reaper plus medicine. Furthermore, they offer help to mothers and their babies long after birth. There are numerous churches that offer personal help to young mothers, and given the Christian impetus toward life and loving the poor, it's unsurprising that the Christian community is responsible for more than twice that of the general population when it comes to adoption in this nation alone, not including adoptions that happen abroad from here. Critics really ought to consider the very hospital where they came into being outside of the womb, or the hospital that they've been in numerous times, maybe even with respect to COVID since then, and a hospital that they may die in. Now think about maybe a hospital that you've seen recently. Is it called Richard Dawkins Hospital, Bill Gates Hospital, Steven Pinker Hospital, Stephen Hawking Hospital, Ibram X. Kendi Hospital? No, it's St. Francis, St. Elizabeth, St. Mark, St. Jude, First Presbyterian Hospital, First Methodist Hospital, Good Samaritan Hospital, Eliezer Hospital. Most hospitals are like that. That alone should be a pointer to the origin and the motivation of hospitality. Now we have an entire major here, just a half a block down, hospitality and tourist management. Hospitals used to be this, but now we have an entire entertainment and leisure industry around it. But where do these things begin? Hospitals were invented by and exponentially multiplied because of Jesus' apprentices following the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. The idea of the hospital arose in prominence in the 4th century with the building of Basil's hospital in the city of Caesarea in the Roman Empire. Basil the Great, a monastic leader, a church bishop, a theologian, and one who suffered himself, established and envisioned the first hospital. You think that's just an accident of history? No. Followers follow. Today, inspired by Christ, the largest disaster relief organizations in the USA and now with operations around the world. The Red Cross, the Salvation Army, the Southern Baptist Convention. Not only were they founded by Christians, but even today, when some have secularized, they're largely staffed by Christians. The largest child relief and adoption organizations are likewise Christian, like Compassion International. The same goes for anti-sex trafficking organizations that help women escape and get back into society, and that work in tandem with local law enforcement to shut down the bad guys. There are more slaves in existence today than there's ever been in the history of humanity. It's Christians who started most of those and continue, even though they've been joined with secularists, to lead most of those organizations. America has become the most prosperous nation in the history of the world and also the economic mothership of organized charity across the globe. Notably, America is among the most heavily influenced by Christianity. That's not just a correlation. There is a rooting there in causation. And we can go on and think about now private charity and a private charitable mentality beyond institutions, beyond systems, when it comes to individual charitable giving. On average, the data shows that conservative Christians are the most charitable. And by conservative Christian, what I mean is those who hold the Bible in high regard, have an understanding of personal conversion, and a dedicated apprenticeship to following Jesus. Ironically, they're even more charitable, according to the data, to secular causes than are secular people. And this goes beyond monetary gifting to commitments like giving of blood. One Syracuse University professor, Arthur Brooks, in the book Who Really Cares, admits that he began as a liberal and a skeptic about the thesis that religious conservatives were the biggest givers per capita. But after having spent 3 decades in philanthropy as an academic, both in the USA and in Europe, he was converted. And he writes, "In years of research, I have never found a measurable way in which secularists are more charitable than religious people." From his research, he goes on to show that religious people were 25 percentage points more likely to give than secularists. Religious people were also 23 points more likely to volunteer. Religious people who per family earned exactly the same amount as secular people, example $449,000, gave about 3.5 times more money per year. They also volunteered more than twice as often. People who pray every day are 30 percentage points more likely to give money to charity than people who never pray. And the churchgoer will be 9 points more likely than the seculars to give to non-religious charities, 25 points more likely to volunteer for secular causes than for secular people. Indeed, he goes on to show that even one's mentality with respect to private charity, one's view of the role of government has measurable consequences. He says that someone who affirms a strong governmental view of care for the poor will give far less than someone skeptical about governmental role in giving to the poor. The data shows that people who have children are on average more generous than those who don't. And due to biblical conviction, Christians excel in baby making. They have a theological, not merely a sociological understanding of the family. People who were raised in church, even if they don't attend now, are more generous on average than those who never regularly attended. Indeed, Bill Gates, who endorsed Pinker's book as the new favorite book of all time, and whose foundation gives millions to charity, claimed in his 2014 interview with Rolling Stone to believe in God, to have been raised in church, and I don't know if he does now because he's recently going through a divorce. He currently has been raising his family with 3 kids in church, even if he doesn't quite understand the faith or its value. This is just the data.